Yep. Nope. It was me. Sorry, you guys. I forgot to hit the mute button, but thank you, everybody. We're on our 5th session of our 4-H orientations. If you weren't on a second ago, if you could take just a minute and put your name and county in the chat box, that would be helpful. I can't see, for some reason, when I'm on my laptop at home and don't have multiple screens, I can't see who's on. I can see that there's 7 people watching, but I don't know who's there. So that way I just know who's there. But today we're going to talk about basic event management as well as 4-H recognition. Now, it seems a little funny that we're doing this fairly early in the process, but I know many of you are starting your planning for the coming year and events. And so I want to just share with you some ways that you could be doing, or some tips on how to do that. The other thing that on the recognition, I know most of you have already done your your achievement nights, but which are great, but I want to give you, oh gosh, it was back in the 90s, I would say, probably about 90, I would say 96 or 97, 4-H was challenged by an author. His name is Alfie Cohen, and he wrote a book. He wrote one on no contest, and then one about, it's called Punished by Rewards. And so basically what he was talking about in those is he was discussing the fact that we recognize kids for everything. And I know that as we go into achievement night, you know, we really want the kids to feel good, and I think it's great that we recognize our young people, but it's something we need to think about how we go about recognizing. Does it always have to be something that we give them? And so I'm going to talk about the member recognition. Well, and so when 4-H was challenged with this, it became a big conversation, and they actually came out with what they call the National Recognition Model. And so I'm going to share that model with everybody, and then and we're going to talk about ways that we can use that within our own county. So it looks like there's 8 of you on. I've had a few people that have given me who's on in the chat box. If you could please do that, that would be fantastic, so I know who's here. I'm not able to see it from my computer today. So I'm gonna start here we go. All right, so we're gonna start with basic event management. And this really goes into, I know as a staff person, when I first started, I had a hard time knowing how to plan events and knowing what to do. And so I ran across some really, I think, outstanding resources throughout the country that I'm going to be sharing with you. But okay. So essentially, when we look at this, I want you to consider these tips. They're going to help make your event planning easier, and also, you know, hopefully give you some ways, there's some resources to help you keep your events on track. So the first thing is how to stay organized. You know, we know you guys, most of you have been on board long enough now that there are certain things that can be a little overwhelming, and the amount of events that we have within 4-H, I think, is one of those pieces that can be very overwhelming for us. And so event planning, you know, can be one of those, like I said, can be one of those tasks. We plan projects for the program year. So we plan projects, we plan fundraising activities, we plan community service activities, as well as those 4-H events. So one example of something, this is something that I do. I find this is a task that I think is really nice, is getting a binder. I always do a binder usually. And I will have a binder for each activity. And I will let you know, even for these orientation sessions, I have a binder for each one of the orientation sessions. So by the time this is over, I will have, 10 or 11 binders. And in each one, it's separated. I have one for the logistics, one for the first, so there'll be one on the PowerPoint and about event management. And there's going to be another tab on the handouts that I used. And what I like about it, and I do the same thing with face-to-face trainings, I always try to have a binder for that, or you could use a notebook or a folder. Either way you can do that, but that way you can keep notes, you can keep track of people that you've contacted, places that people that you've talked to, or if you had to leave a message, etc. The other piece we have to remember look at is remembering our goal. So why are you putting this event together? Is it because somebody asked you to? Is it because the county you've always done it and that's what you think you need to do? But you need to think about what the goal of that event is. Make sure that you know what those goals and objectives. You want to make sure also that you know what you hope the attendees get out of it. Things like National Youth Science Day, that's another example of an activity or an event that we plan. And what do we want the kids to get out of that day? And so I think that helps you when you're planning the event, because it helps you, when you're thinking about National Youth Science Day. So you want them to learn about, this year you wanted them to learn about drones and learn about unmanned aerial, aircraft. And so you want to plan that you have enough people there to help out, and that you have enough stations that individuals can work in the different stations. Another thing to remember another piece is having a committee is a good thing when you're planning events. And I think having young people on those committees being engaged in their own learning is really a positive thing. You're going to, that way they're involved in their own learning, and that the event is going to be fairly successful because they know what they want to learn, what they want to have. And also you're giving them the skills that they need later on in how to build an event. So, and then communication. I think that this is, let your committees know what you need. If this is a big event, I think about the example of, so I was in Clark County a couple of weeks ago for their achievement night, and they had many different components to the night. They had the awards, they had the activities, they had a lot of fundraising type activities, they had a silent auction, and one thing that could benefit from that, then they had overall chairs. And something that I think is a positive thing is maybe you have subcommittees within that planning. So you have someone that is completely, I think their teens were the ones in charge of the fundraising activities. So they had it cost you $1 and you got to eat a donut, or they had a haunted house or a pumpkin carving. And so having a group be in charge of those things, have one that's in charge of the awards and have one that's in charge of the auction, silent auction. I think that really delegating those tasks, I know I have a hard time delegating tasks a lot of times, but even if it seems like it's a small thing, you're getting someone else involved, and it makes them feel like they're a part of the organization and a part of the program. And then staying on task. And this is where I'm going to share with you several examples. One is an event activity and 4-H activity and event planning outline that comes from University of California. I think this one is really, really good. And then, and actually I'm going to go ahead and pull that up to share with you. Okay. Sorry, I'm having to do this a little bit differently today, so it's a little more confusing. Okay, here we go. So this document, and I'm going to share this document with you. I will send this to you. But essentially, this is what I like is, okay, so you have the name of the event, the attendance, then what are your objectives, the dates, the times, the facility, who your contact at the facility is, the phone number, the address, and the city. And then we're going to move on down to committee members. So you might have an overall chair and a phone number, and then you're going to have the name of your committee members and their responsibility along with a telephone number. Then you can use this document to keep notes. And I think that that, again, is another really good, piece. Sorry, I'm going back to, let's see. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to go back because I do have a lot of this in the PowerPoint as well. Okay, I like it when I have my multiple screens. So again, you can see this has got the information. You can keep notes on your planning, you know, if you have committee meetings, or if you find that, you know, this could be a document for you to use. So if you find someone isn't necessarily a good fit for maybe an activity, then you could make a note there for the next year that maybe they shouldn't be involved in that committee or that subcommittee. And then what questions do we have about our responsibilities? And so use this question to write down, or use this section to write down questions that you have. You can also give this to all of the other committee members as well. I think this is a good document that everybody has a copy of as well. So, and then make sure to bring it to their next committee meeting. And then this page I like because it talks about all of the things that maybe you need to think about. So planning checklist. So if you have publicity, you know, who's going to be doing the flyers, who's going to be doing the news releases, and then when those are completed. You can also attach to this document that list of information for radios, televisions, newspapers. And then also the facilities. You can, you know, the contract. This would be a great place to put the copy of the contract. Now, just as a reminder for everybody, if you are planning an event in your community, I just want to remind you also that if you are signing a contract to use a facility within your community, even though, you know, if it's a contract and you're signing it on behalf of 4-H or University of Nevada Cooperative Extension, you cannot sign that contract. That has to come to the university to be signed. Now, typically those don't take very long to be signed. For the most part, it's, you know, within a 1 or 2 day turnaround, but every once in a while there'll be a hang up, but that is the rule, because if something were to happen, say you rented the community, like the local community center, and they had you sign a contract. Well, in that contract, it completely waived their rights to any liability on that facility. You guys come in and use the facility. There's a broken board when you're coming up the steps into the facility. There's a broken board. You know, University of Nevada Cooperative Extension 4-H had nothing to do with that broken board, but you had a mother go through, fall in, break their leg because you signed the contract. And what it basically comes down to is you're not allowed to, they're not allowed to completely say that, you know, we're void of any liability. And the universities knows how to catch those. Anyway, the university may say, sorry, you're out of luck. Another example of something that I know has happened, it did not happen in Nevada, but it happened in another state, is they signed a contract with a bus company to transport kids to an event. The morning of the event, they have the kids all gathered, waiting for the bus, waiting for the bus, waiting for the bus. It's an hour late. They call the bus company and they're like, no, we're not coming. You know, sorry, we're not coming, something came up, or I can't remember what the excuse was exactly. So then they had to rush and get another bus company. It cost them twice as much money to get another bus there to take these kids to this state event. And they ended up having to pay both bus companies, the first one that didn't show up, and the second one that they had to pay as much money. And the reason they had to pay the first bus company is because the county 4-H person signed the contract, and it stated, we may not show up, and if we don't, you still have to pay us, basically. And the university will catch those pieces. And the university said, sorry, we're not fighting it for you. You signed the contract. We did not see it ahead of time. So I just want to forewarn you on those. You can send those, and if you have that come out with the contract, you can either send it to Dan Brush, and the finance fiscal officer for extension, or you could send it to myself. For those of you in the southern area, you could send it to Lisa, Lisa Wilson, and she would be able to help you. Or even in the northern area, Carla Buyer would be able to help you as well. So, but if you have a question on that, just get a hold of one of us, and we can help you with that. But it also gives you a place to tell if you have to pay for the facility. And then if you're doing a program, then it gives you, when do you need that printing done? Who's doing the cover artwork, and when's it going to be done? And who's doing the content, and when is that going to be done? And then also, these are equipment needs. We always think about, okay, so who's bringing the flags? Who's bringing the gavel or the sound system, or, the awards? I've gotten to events and people have forgotten to bring the flags because nobody was specifically signed up. So this gives you the exact, this gives you a place to be able to put that information. And it makes you remember those things as well. The other piece I like about this is, so this document is, you can put this in a folder or put this in a binder, and then the next year you've got your notes from the previous year if it's something that you do year after year. And then we've got the program activity or event outline. So again, this is, if you've got multiple things happening, I think about our livestock contest, the state livestock contest. So say one person's in charge of the livestock skillathon, another person's in charge of the quiz bowl, another person's in charge of livestock judging. You can put all of those things in here, and who's supposed to be in charge and what their phone number is, etc., how to get a hold of them. And then you have the kind of those finishing touches. So this is, if you do give certificates or awards, so state livestock contest, you would attach the scores and the awards in the back, and you would also provide a description of the awards. Another, sponsors, anybody that you had sponsor the event, you can get their information in there, and you can make sure that they're recognized at the event as well as after the event. You can put a copy of the program. If there's a participants or a sign-in sheet, you can include that information in there. And then thank you notes. Who were thank you notes sent to, and what date were they sent? And so, like I said, I've got a copy of that document I will be sharing with you as well. Then the other piece is evaluating your event. I know that sometimes this is really difficult to do. This happens a lot with camps. So we hold camp, we get our evaluations from the kids, but we don't necessarily go back to our committee, our planning committee, and have a debriefing on that event, on what truly happened, what didn't, what can you do well, what can you do differently next time, and what happened that you didn't plan for. I think that that's another key piece. So when you think about this, proper event planning, it helps make that 4-H event more enjoyable. I can remember showing up to events and, something would happen and I would have my binder and I could just, nope, sorry, you guys said you were going to do this, or, working with a hotel or working with a facility. Hey, it states in our contract that you need to, you've got to provide 5 extension cords. We only have 3 here. We need 2 more. You need to go get those for us. And so, or how many times have you shown up at a facility and it's not open? I think this probably happens to our county folks more often than we care to want to realize. But there are so many times that we show up to a building, it's locked, nobody's there, nobody knows who the contact is to get a hold of, who to call, to unlock the building, etc. And so having kind of that planning, having all of that information written down is always beneficial. Oops. And then, so then I want to share with you the piece from Ohio State as well. Okay, now I'm going to share this screen. Let's see, here we go. So this is a document from Ohio State that was put together. This doesn't have necessarily the step-by-step like the California document does, but what I like about this is it gets us thinking about the events. So you think about setting up a planning committee, setting the goals, brainstorming or surveying members, etc. And so things like goal setting. What are the ages of the members? Where do they live? Do they belong to other organizations? I know when I was up in Pershing County for their achievement night, they tried to find a night that there weren't any school events, and they did a really good job. They looked at the calendar, they called the school to make sure there was nothing, and then about a week or 2 before the event, the school came out with, they were having a big wrestling event that evening. And so, you can't help those things, but it actually gets you to think about, within your community, what are some of the other things that we need to be looking at? Are there school events? Is there a big Girl Scout or Boy Scout meeting that night? Start trying to just think of those types of additional activities. Then you can look at, what do kids want at these events? And then looking at the member assignments. This can also be used for a club. As you can see, this can also be used for a club. And I think this would be something good for counties to share with their clubs as well. All right. So any questions on event management? I know that was really fast and kind of, pretty quick, but the documents that I have are really beneficial. They're going to help in planning events. And if you haven't already, if you can let me know just by typing your name and your county in the chat box, then that would be fantastic. That way I can keep track of who's on. Like I said, I don't have access to that right now. And so, great, thanks, Sunny. That's kind of why I'm like, I don't need to go into too much more information because it's pretty straightforward, but hopefully you'll find that these tools will be helpful. I know I used to, I plan events all the time, and I actually started using these tools because they are really beneficial. And I think this is a good piece as well to use with your volunteers, this PowerPoint, and because I think a lot of times our volunteers don't always know how to plan an event, or even our young people don't know how to plan those events. And so trying to get them to give them those skills. All right. So now I'm going back to find the member recognition model. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I am going to be sharing. So now we're going to talk about the recognition model. And so really we need to think about recognizing our members. And when we do that, there's several ways. So the biggest question is why do we recognize our members and our adults? One of the main reasons is we want to provide a positive environment. Everybody likes to get recognized. It helps us build, or helps us develop self-confidence or confidence and self-esteem in young people. It also gives our young people a sense of accomplishment and a sense of competence. And so I think that is important. It gives them that greater sense of competence. It's also providing an environment that offers them, the 4-H members, as an acknowledgement and affirmation of their growth and their development and their contribution to the 4-H program. I know that a lot of times, we can get overly, like every kid has to get something, but I think being able to recognize an improvement is huge. And I think that is a critical piece. So when we look at what can awards programs do, again, it can foster that self-esteem and that sense of reliance, self-reliance. These are two important self-concepts that we're trying to ensure for a healthy adult life. And so this is part of what our goal is to develop self-esteem and self-reliance in our young people. It provides incentive for further achievement. I think, do we all remember that one young person? Oops, sorry, I moved. I can remember when I was growing up in high school, especially, I was showing my sheep, and there was always those one or two individuals that were, always the high showman. They were grand champion showman, grand champion market, and I always wanted to beat them. And so what did we do? We always, I worked harder each year to be able to build, to do that. And so it gave me that sense of self-reliance. Here's what I'm doing to help myself to move forward and to be able to beat them. And the same thing can be said for a record book. I know some counties that having that top place record book is huge. And I think that, we have a lot of kids that work year after year after year to get that. And also, the awards recognition and competition can have a huge influence on young people. Again, it provides them that incentive for further learning and the inspiration for continued learning. It also provides individuals and businesses an opportunity to publicly support our young people in their accomplishments, leading to a better connection with the youth and in the communities. When we get companies that will donate awards, I know great presentation in Pershing County. Again, I'm giving you examples of places I've been this year, but Pershing County, Nevada State Bank sponsored, and I can't remember which award it was, but they sponsored the awards. And what they did is at their awards banquet, or the achievement night, the representative from Nevada State Bank went up and actually gave out that recognition to the young people. And I think that that's a great way to do it. It seems like I had another example of that and it just went out of my mind. Sorry, I can't. But I think that those types of opportunities for our businesses and our communities is always really good too. Oops. So the national recognition model, this is actually what the recognition model looks like. There are 5 components to it. So we look at, there's 5 types of recognition. And so I think it's important as adults who work with our 4-Hers that we understand and recognize the appropriate type of recognition for all of our participants. It's the recognition of 4-H members for participation in educational experiences acknowledges their involvement. That's that first step in providing that positive self-concept. And so we need to look at so we've got a participation. So when you think about participation, this is the type of recognition that emphasizes the importance of acknowledging young people that have been involved in 4-H educational experiences. For some children, it's just that participation in a 4-H learning experience that's an accomplishment. So an example of that would be our Clover Buds. We know that it is not developmentally, it is not appropriate for Clover Buds to be in a competitive situation. Now, I know that there's a lot of talk right now in the political world about individuals, we're in everybody receives a trophy world or standard, and I don't agree with that. But what I'm saying is, with Clover Buds, the research is there, and it shows that they are not developmentally ready to understand why they won or lost, and so that's why we do participation for Clover Buds. And this is why we give year pins. Some counties choose to give year pins as well. Because of that, it's that participation, hey, I'm a 10-year 4-H member. We also have progress towards self-set goals. And so this is when we are, as adults, we are working with our young people to set realistic goals. So recognizing that type of progress towards reaching those goals, no matter how small it is really important, and it's an integral part of recognition. One of the projects that I think does a really good job with this is called the Self-Determined Project. I know that we have it, but I don't know how much it's used. And there are really, really good resources out there for our young people to use, because what the Self-Determined, a lot of times what they use the Self-Determined for is there's not a project out there. Say one came up the other day on boxing, like fighting boxing, but they were using it not for to teach people how to fight, but they were using it for healthy living essentially, and some of those skills. And so one of the things that I suggested was this would be a good Self-Determined project, because there isn't curriculum out there. But what they could do with that is each kid sets a goal for themselves, and then they are judged based on those goals. They're not judged on how great their project is, where they placed in a boxing tournament or whatever. They're judged based on how they met their goals. Their goals might be to be able to, I'm thinking of boxing. Their goal for the year might be, I can land a left hook. If they can do that, great. And then we have achievement of standards of excellence. So this is really looking at those standards that are established by experts in a given area. So this would be, livestock contests, when we have our market livestock, the animals and the personal progress is being judged against a set of standards. That's one of the other reasons why it's so important that we use member and leader materials for our projects, because within those there are standards for the young people to be reaching through their lesson plans. And so that's how young people learn and gain insight into their own efforts and abilities. Then we have peer competition. So this is probably the one that in 4-H we know the best, in competition and fairs, and just those variety. And so this is a part of recognition. I think it's an important part if the young person is developmentally ready for that. It's where subjectively you identify in a concrete place or time the best team or the best individual. So again, this is a strong motivator for a lot of our youth, but it's not appropriate for youth under the age of 8. And then we also have cooperation. So learning and working together promotes high achievement. I think that's another piece. Cooperation, may take advantage of all the skills represented in the group. So when you have groups working together, then they are, that they're learning those skills, and it's a process too, and then everybody is rewarded for that group work. And the thing is you shouldn't have just one type of recognition in your county. You really need to look at all 5 types of recognition and providing that variety. Because not everybody is going to want to be involved in peer competition. Not everybody's going to want to be in a cooperative, doing everything together. You need to really think about what best fits your county and your community. So using or designing or looking at this recognition model, it really encourages and supports learning. I think by having a little bit of everything, you get, it supports that learning. You can satisfy intrinsic and extrinsic needs for recognition. We all know that not everybody likes to get a plaque. Not everybody likes to get a ribbon. Some people just want you to say thank you and great job for achieving your goals. And it also gives balance. If everything was peer competition, I think that we would lose a lot of our participants. So now what I'm going to share with you are some examples from the county and state level. These are ones that have been thought about and things that you can, that help you to move, to think about what you could do in your county. So participation. So this is 4-Hers receive recognition at the county level by joining clubs. They serve in leadership roles both at the club and the county level. And then they also can, and then this is also, where the types of recognition that you can show are certificate of completion. So, this is everybody gets a certificate, or everybody gets a pin or a medal or some kind of participation. And so this, I think, is good, especially, you think about this participation in leadership roles. So maybe you recognize that at your achievement night, you recognize all of the club presidents, everybody that served as a club president for the year, because or a club officer for the year, because that they have done a lot of extra work, and this would be a great way. Or again, I mentioned, the year pins. This is both for adults and volunteers, or adults and youth. Then you also have the progress. How can you recognize that at the county level? So one thing that you can do is assist the members in setting those realistic goals. Though you can complete those goals through a demonstration, finishing a specific project, or even completing a record book. The recognition for this type of area may include a celebration of project completion, such as exhibiting that completed project at the county fair, or exhibiting their skills in an archery, like this, a county shoot or state match. And then no matter how small that achievement is, giving that recognition for them just being there, I think is important. And then we have our achievements, our achievement. So this is those standards of excellence. So in many states, and we don't have that in Nevada that I have found, counties probably have it, but I have not found it anywhere really, is project requirements. And so a lot of states have a document called a project requirements handbook. These are the things that a 4-Her needs to do in order to complete a project. And then also each project has a scorecard that could be used to judge at the fair. So like cake decorating. There might be a scorecard that's standard that somebody that's in the industry has come up with. These are the criteria that we're looking for. And so when they go to judge a cake decorating, a cake that's been decorated, they know what the standards are. And so this is this is really where it gets into the Danish system, the blue, the red, and the white ribbons. Each one of those is based on a set of standards. And so, that's one of the reasons why we use the Danish system. And then we can also do pins or medals or that grand champion ribbon at the fair when you've reached a certain standard. And then we have peer competition. So this is the opportunity for individuals or teams to compete, judging contests, speaking contests, presentation contests, etc. And this is typically you show recognition through ribbons, certificates, other gifts. This is an example. I mean, this isn't a real good example, but some competitions give jackets out for first place teams, etc. So this is any time that you have a young person that is competing against their peers. And then we have cooperation. So this could be like service activities. When everybody participates and that a job well done, then they would get that recognition. And also this could be a public recognition, in that public recognition. So say a service project. So if a club does a service project, or if you do a countywide service project, that could also, you could do a picture in the newspaper of all of the kids that participated. And that again is a recognition. That's a type of recognition. Are there any questions about the recognition piece, the county recognition, or any ideas that people might have about what to do for county recognition based on these 5 areas? Everybody seems quiet now. Okay. Well, I'm going to move on to some ideas and this might give you some more ideas for county as well. But we have state. Oops, somebody just typed in it okay, let me go. We do pins for those who turn in their record books, but I don't really care for the way it's done. Okay. So maybe you could give a pin for the record book, but then you move. So that's one way for participation, but then you could move into a peer competition with record books, or maybe you do the progress towards SelfSet goals, and within their record book, they have a set of goals. And if they reach those goals, then they get another kind of recognition. So that's an idea. So yeah, I mean, some people, they kind of do just a variety of things. But when we look at state examples, so things, participation, maybe this is where they're selected to attend district or state events or activities. So maybe they're selected to participate in 4-H Capital Days, or 4-H ambassadors. And so you can show this recognition, one by public recognition. We tend to put our pictures in the newspaper, or county support. And this could be self-selected participation, or this could be county, the 4-H office participation. And then I just have a picture of the 4-H camp, because that's another event, district or state event that they may choose to participate in. Our progress towards SelfSet goals. So this would be a celebration of project completion. So, and this is just one example of like a progression from county, district, state, and national level competition. So if you have a young person that sets their mind up, they want to be on a national livestock judging team, and they have set those goals and worked out ways that they're going to achieve those goals, then you would do some kind of celebration for them. But they have, there is that recognition at the county, they've moved on to the district or the area, they've moved on to the state, and then the national competition. And so shooting sports is another one. Young people will build their skills and exhibit those skills in that project area at the club and county level, and then they may move on to the state event, and then may move on to the national event. So each one of those steps, it would include setting goals and how to increase their knowledge. And then we have the achievement. So this is where you would have the progressive project exhibition. Now, we don't have a state fair, so we wouldn't take them to the state fair, but maybe there might be other opportunities. The other piece, they may choose to move on to another. Shooting sports is the example. They may move on to another level. And then peer competition, this is where they progress from county to a higher level of competition. So this includes like public speaking, consumer decision making, which I'm not sure how many of you, if anybody is familiar with that, but it's a competition. We don't offer it currently here in Nevada. It's something, maybe eventually we can do, but it's for those FCS young people. The horse contest, livestock events, shooting sports. So again, you've got, different types of recognition. And then, oops, I skipped one. And then you have the cooperation. So these are service activities, educational program planning, development, leadership. And so this example doesn't necessarily fit Nevada, but I wanted to share it with you. So in Idaho, they have Know Your Government. So young people can attend that typically as an 8th or 9th grader, or 8th and 9th grader. And then that third year, they can apply for the third year to be on the Know Your Government Planning Committee. And so that's a progression to the next step. And then maybe they've served on that planning committee and they're really interested in attending National 4-H Conference as a delegate from the state and representing the state on that. And it kind of all ties together. So there's that progression going from an attendee to then a national committee or a national conference. So why is this so important? Why is it important to have all of the different types of recognition? And I guess one of the things I would like, if people in the chat box could share share why they think recognition is important and why it's important to have a variety of types of recognition. Trying to get everybody be a little bit more interactive. Okay, everybody is different. Different things motivate different people. Exactly. Like myself, I'm not necessarily a peer competition motivated person, but my husband is very much a peer oriented competition. I'd rather see kids set goals and reach those goals than have competition. Now, when it comes to my son, I'm a little different, but any other thoughts? I know we've got 8 people on. I want to hear from some others. Okay, well, basically it also helps build, there we go, we've got, let's see, I think it's important to recognize kids, okay, competition driven, yep, and then, yeah, and that's, we have to remember as 4-H professionals, if you are competition driven, you need to sit and think about these other ways that we can recognize kids too. And it's important to give those kids who gain the ability recognition too. A lot of kids are just excited. So the kids are excited to get recognized, and that could be. And so I think it is important that we do recognize our young people and give people a goal to, if it's top record book or if it's, I know, so another example, like in FFA, the American FFA degree. So back when I was a young person many, many years ago, they gave the American FFA degree only went to 1% of the membership within that state. And so it was a competition, but yet it was based on your own goals that you set for yourself, your own work, etc. If you reached, and there were a set of standards that you had to reach in order to even qualify, and then, it moved through that. So it really does hit. Now, it's still the same way. It's just they don't, and maybe membership is just a lot higher, but it was always my goal to receive that degree. And so that is something that we need to think about. That's just one example, but that's something, maybe at your county level, you can think about what is an award that we can give that brings in, there might be some peer competition to it, but it also is based on standards of excellence, and it's based on setting, achieving your own goals, etc. So just, an idea. Yeah. As long as you applied, okay, and met all your criteria. Yeah, so they have changed that now. If you meet the criteria, then you automatically get it. And back when I was doing it, you had to meet the criteria, and then you had a peer competition. And so think about that at the county level. What's something that you could do that maybe they have to meet a certain standard, but then there's also, there might be another set of competition with it. Or there could also be, something where they have to reach that set of standards. And it also gives them a way to feel a part of a program. And then it also gives you as a staff person a model to look at. And so are there any other questions, comments about this? So what I'm going to share with you is I'm going to share the PowerPoint, and then Idaho put together a document that I would like us to start thinking about in Nevada. I don't think we're quite there yet. We have a lot of other things I think that we maybe need to work on, but they put together kind of a recognition model white paper per se, and it talks about why it's important. A lot of this information came from that document because I truly believe in it. I didn't even have any part of that document creating it, but I really truly believe in this. And so I think it's a good piece to look at. Obviously some of it isn't going to necessarily apply, but the basic concept is really there. There used to be a lot more out there. The other thing that I recommend is going out and finding, if you can, the No Contest and Punishment by Rewards by Alfie Cohen. Not that I necessarily agree 100% with those books. I think there's good points and there's bad points to them, but it just gets you thinking about how we do that. And so any other questions about the recognition model, kind of what we should be, some of the things we should be looking at? Like I said, I know this year it's too late to implement a lot of that, but I think as we're starting to plan the next year, then that is that's something you can start thinking about. What is a new member ceremony? That is something, Molly, I will let you know, is unique to Lyon County, I believe. Does anybody else that's on do a new member ceremony? Because last year, okay, so Sharon said no. Yeah, I know last year Kate was asking me where to get a copy of it, and I was like, I've never heard of that. So it's not anything we've done at the national level or at the state level. I think Sarah might have helped them create that, and that's one thing, a lot of times our new members just like to have that recognition of being a new member. So other thoughts? I know Sharon, now that I see that you're on, I know you've been doing this a while, any kind of unique things that you're doing in your county for recognition? When I was up in Eureka last weekend, or this past weekend, they did, one of the clubs gave each one of their members a beanie, like a stocking cap, that had the name of their club on it because they take a big ski trip every year, and that was kind of their recognition for being a member of the club and saying thank you for being a member of the club, but then also for the leader to be able to find them on the ski hill too. Okay, pin certificates for record books, and then award top books in junior, intermediate, and senior, and that's pretty typical. That's pretty typical. No, there should not be a Cloverbud record book. There can be a Cloverbud memory book, but Cloverbuds should not be completing a full-fledged record book. Number one, think about how old they are. I can guarantee you I would not sit down with my 5, 6, 7-year-old, 8-year-old and fill out a record book with them. I'm not going to do it. And if we can get them to write one or two things, a memory book, record book and a memory book so record book is where they write a story and they keep track of all their meetings and they're doing a variety, they're having all of those things. The memory book is, what was the funnest thing you did this year? What do you want to learn about next year? And they might write one-word answers. So, and Cloverbuds should never be judged. So, and I like the outstanding Volunteer of the Year award. I think that's really great. Okay, yep, they can get there is a new pin and a certificate, and then this year they're giving the Cloverbud coloring book from National. I think that those are great. I've been to some where they give them a water bottle and then it's filled with candy because Cloverbuds need more candy, but that's another one. And yes, Molly, I do have, or actually if you go on I think Idaho has a good example. Try to avoid candy, yes, especially with that age group. Idaho has a good example of a Cloverbud memory book. I think Ohio has a really good example of one. I'm trying to think of what some of the others. I will, there's a few others. If you just type in Cloverbud memory books, 4-H Cloverbud memory books, you'll come up with some really good examples of what you could use. Yeah, okay, K-State, yes. I can never remember who all has good ones. So, but I think the Cloverbuds, they love to get that little bit of recognition. I think the new pins are really cool. And then, just some kind of little trinket. And that's a great participation. That's a really good participation award. And then a lot of counties love the year pins for the kids, and having them get those pins and be able to put on their shirt, or if you want to do some kind of sash, or if you live in California, you put it on your beanie, your hat. So there's just a whole different variety of things. Any other thoughts on recognition? I think it's really cool to be creative too. Last year in White Pine, the horse kids White Pine does, or at least last year, they did an outstanding job. I think their volunteers go out and get all kinds of donations. Either that or they, and all the horse kids got a bucket, like a water bucket filled with like brushes and curry combs and a variety of things. And, those are great. This year they all got head stalls. Yeah, okay, so they do it for your horse show. And I think that there's all those different types of things. It doesn't have to be at achievement night. Maybe you do it at the horse show. And I just thought about it, Sharon, as you were saying that. An example of something that we've done, that we have in Nevada, that some of you may not be aware of with the Horse Project, is the horse achievement levels. And so that would be an example of the standards of excellence. So there is a standard that's on the website of what young people need to do to reach a certain level, and if they pass that, then they can receive a metal. And just so you know, Sharon, the new metals are in. So if you need them, then I can get those to you. We have not had training on those levels in a long time, because my understanding is there wasn't a lot of people using that. And so I think, if that's something that we want to do at some point, we could probably work on trying to do some kind of training for that. I can work with those individuals that are trained to do that. So, okay, the horse show is a requirement for them to pass level 1. So yes, so you would do that. And Sharon, I'm actually headed to Vegas, but I will send a note and ask them to get that out to you, because I won't be back until Thursday, but I will have them send those out to you. So, but yeah, Jasmine, that's a great way to do that. And so that's one example of those standards of excellence that we do have in Nevada that people can be utilizing. And we have brand new metals for it this year. We were running out, and I just decided to scrap the ones that we had because they were falling apart and order new ones. So, all right, any other questions or thoughts? Well, if not, thank you everybody for participating today, and thank you everybody for being adaptable. I had a schedule conflict come up for tomorrow. I have to go to Las Vegas for a National 4-H Council is coming to do training for the Western region on the branding campaign, that 4-H Grows Here campaign, and how we can utilize it. And these were the dates that they were available. So I was like, okay, I'm going to, I can switch that. So I really appreciate people being adaptable to that. When National 4-H Council wants to come in and do training for us, we tried not to say no. And then what I'll be doing is going through that. Claudine, Wharton, myself, and Marilyn Ming are all going to be attending that training, and then we're going to be pulling together some information for you at the county level on how we can utilize that brand and really do some more work around it in marketing. So thank you. And if you didn't put your name and county in the chat box, please do so that way I know you were on. And have a great rest of the week. And I will not talk to people before Thanksgiving, so have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.